In this video, I want to talk about having some realistic expectations of how to achieve things, specifically towards academia, since this is an academic channel and I mostly get questions about academic things. So I get a number of emails asking me for advice on how to achieve certain things. Like, let's start with maybe one of the most common emails I get. I would almost say surprisingly common questions. It's, I have a bachelor's degree in something, I have an undergraduate degree in something, now I want to do a PhD in something completely different, and I don't want to do or can't do anything in between. I don't want to go back, I don't want to do anything in between. I just want to go straight from an undergraduate in, let's say, psychology to a PhD in physics. And the honest answer to that question is, that's not happening. That's not realistic. Because a PhD is an advanced degree. It's an expectation that you're going to know a bunch of physics before you start a PhD in physics. And so if you have no physics coursework, you're not getting into a PhD in physics. That's just how it is. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't do a PhD in physics. It just means you're going to have to go back and do an undergraduate degree in physics. Like, there is no one who can give you a magic pill or give you a magic trick on how to get into a PhD in physics if you don't have any physics knowledge beforehand. Now, if your degree is in something that's more closely related, like let's say you have an undergraduate degree in chemistry and you specialized in organic chemistry, which is pretty far from physics in reality, you can probably still get into a master's in chemistry. Then you can take a bunch of physics courses. You can specialize in physical chemistry, basically do a research project in physics, and now you're qualified for a PhD in physics. So that's a possibility. But to go from doing an undergrad in psychology to doing a PhD in physics, that's not happening. That's just how it is. So what you need to do is go back and do a bachelor's degree in whatever you want to do a PhD in, and then you can go from there. Okay, so the second very common question I'm getting is, how can I get into a PhD in Denmark? Or can I get into a PhD in Denmark with only an undergraduate degree? Now, I made a video on how to get into a PhD program in Denmark, and I give the most of the advice I have, I give in that video. And I mostly just talk about the assumption that you have a master's degree beforehand. But it is in theory possible to start a PhD in Denmark with only a bachelor's degree through what's called a 3+5 degree. You also have the 4+4 degree where you start a master's. You do the first year of your master's, and then you do the rest is basically a PhD. Now, the honest answer is that you're probably not going to get one of those, because there is very little, there is much less of a foundation to evaluate you on if you don't have a master's degree. So if you have a master's degree, you will have done a research project that the professor can evaluate you on before you start. If you do well in a master's program, they have a much better foundation to evaluate whether or not you're going to be successful in a PhD program. In reality, the 3+5 degrees and 4+4 degrees are reserved for students that the professor already knows. Those positions have probably been created for a specific student in mind. Now, you will see some of these degrees posted online and job boards and whatever, but that's probably mostly because they are required to do so. Many of these positions have to go out for a public call, but it's already they already have a person they want to hire for this position because they already know that person. They know that person will probably do well in a PhD program, And that's the reality of the situation. So you're going to be much better off with a master's degree. You're going to be much more competitive if you have a master's degree. And getting a PhD in Denmark with just a bachelor's degree, without knowing a professor beforehand, I think that's basically impossible. Now, there is one thing I didn't mention in my how to get a PhD in Denmark video. I have one weird trick to get a PhD in Denmark. This is going to apply to all over Scandinavia, and I would not limit myself to just Denmark. Like, Scandinavia is all over Scandinavia is going to be pretty good. It's very good PhD conditions. Probably the best in the world. But here's the one weird trick. So if you really want to go to one specific university, you want to do a PhD at one specific university in Scandinavia, you should do a master's degree at this university because it's much easier to get into a master's program. Then you have to do well. You should go to do a research project in a group that gets a lot of funding, where the professor is probably going to get funding for a PhD position later. And you need to do well and make that professor like you and think that you're good at what you do. And then that professor might create a position for you. This is usually how Danes or Scandinavians get PhDs. Most Scandinavians, or at least this is my impression at least, a lot of people in Scandinavia does a research project during their bachelor's degree, and then they do a master's project in the same group, and then they do a PhD in the same group, and then they do a postdoc in the same group. This is very common, and I see it all the time. So that's my one weird trick to getting a PhD in Denmark, or Scandinavia in general. Now, this isn't necessarily easy because you still have to do well. It's not enough that they like you and they want to hire you. You still have to be competitive so that they can defend giving you this position. A lot of universities and a lot of grad schools require you to have a certain level of grades and stuff like that before you start. So you still need to be competitive. Okay, so the final question I sometimes get is, I have a suboptimal GPA. Let's say I have a GPA of 3.0. Now I want to go to a prestige institution, either in specifically Denmark or anywhere in the world, really. And I don't want to do anything in between. Again, if you don't have the grades, you're not going to be accepted. Let's say you want to go to Harvard and you have a 3.0 GPA. There's a million applicants at Harvard that has a 4.0 GPA, that have perfect grades. It's very unlikely you're going to be accepted into that program. And it's the same with Denmark. A lot of universities have these cutoffs, or there is a lot of competition, and you're going to need good grades to get it. That's just a fact. So the way to mitigate this is you have to go and either you go back, you retake coursework to get perfect grades, or you do a master's degree and get perfect grades. That's how you do that. Now, the question you should ask yourself, why do you want to go to this specific university? If you're really desperate to go to this specific university, you have to basically go back and redo your coursework, or you need to have perfect grades. But if your end goal here is to become an academic or whatever, then you can go to a lower ranked university, and then you can do really well in that program, and then later on you can do a postdoc or whatever at like a prestige institution and become a hotshot academic that way. You don't have to go to a top tier institution in order to get anywhere in life. That's a myth. That seems to be a thing. People think you need to go to Harvard to get anywhere in life. That's not true. But if you do need to go back, or you want to take a new direction in your studies, especially with STEM, the sponsor of this video can help you with that. Brilliant. So Brilliant is a learning platform that focuses on math, physics, and computer science. So the great thing about Brilliant is that it can take you through steps that are tailored to your level, meaning that you can start at whatever level you prefer. Like if you have no prior knowledge, you can start at the beginning and work your way to the end. Or if you have prior knowledge, you can start at whatever level you feel challenged at and then work your way through to the end. And another great thing about Brilliant is the interactive design of the platform. So you get a much greater sense of the material when you actually interact with it and you actually do the exercises within the platform. It's built in a way that makes it much more enjoyable and much easier to learn and to retain the knowledge you obtain. So personally, I've been working on their Python course recently. I have no prior knowledge of programming, but their platform makes it much easier and much more enjoyable to learn the basic concept of programming. And this really helps me with retaining the information. To get a 30-day free trial, go to brilliant.org/olavrio, scan the QR code on screen, or click the link in the description. All my viewers also get 20% off an annual subscription to the premium service of Brilliant, which gives you unlimited access to everything on Brilliant. So thank you to Brilliant for sponsoring this video, and thank you for watching.